What is up, fellow sickos? I am Dan Favale coming at you with the one, the only, my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. Our off-season look-ahead train rolls onward. We're going to be focusing on the Cleveland Cavaliers in this look-ahead. Grant, before we get started, how the heck are you?
I'm doing very well. I'm excited to cover the Cavs here because as they were being eliminated, I had some thoughts about them, and I'm eager to share them with you.
Oh, that's exciting. Let's not waste any time then. Let's dig right into it. Okay, so do you need to get those thoughts off before we get into their off-season vitals?
No, I think we'll get to them organically because I feel like they might curtail the discussion if I throw them out right now. So let's get through the vitals.
So I'll do the vitals on this one. They're $5 million into the second apron, in part because Evan Mobley won Defensive Player of the Year, so his contract got bumped up to that 30% max. That does not include, though, new deals for Ty Jerome, who's an early bird free agent, which basically means they can give him 175% raise off his current salary or 105% of the league average salary. It'll be 105% of the league average salary if he sticks around because he's just making so little. It also does not include Sam Merrill. And I think this is kind of the question to start with, though, Grant, is they did duck the tax at the trade deadline while getting DeAndre Hunter, which was smart because I think they knew that this type of season was coming. But when you start to get into, okay, they've now, it's not just that they haven't made it out of the second round in the past 3 years, it's that they've won 2 second-round games since trading for Donovan Mitchell, which is not a lot. There are built-in excuses, and I don't mean excuses in a derogatory way anyway. Like, they've been dealing with injuries this season included. But when you kind of look at this team, do you expect them to just be like, well, we're just going to at least spend deep into the second apron for next season?
Well, I mean, that's and just to illustrate it, what I have, and this is from Bobby Marks, is that if you give Ty Jerome, for just as an example, I'll answer your question, like 4 for 64 is about as high as they can go according to his estimates. And if you're adding 14 million in salary in 25-26, all your penalties and stuff, tack another 80 million onto that. Like, so that's
Is that
like
a lot?
just it's a fair amount, I'd say, fair to middling. So like that's just getting to your question is like, well, how far are these guys going to go with a core that like everybody loves and they won 64 games, but it's like 2 second round wins is still just 2 second round wins. How much more money do you dump into this? Or can you spend a little smarter and maybe get just as good of results without Ty Jerome or whatever, like trimming payroll a little bit? So I think you are well, one, you're sort of stuck. Like all of the guys that make the most money are just not going anywhere. Like maybe you consider Jared Allen, but he's a distant fourth on the like salary pecking order of Cleveland's top guys. But so I think they will continue to be deep into the second apron just because like I think the moves you'd make to get meaningful salary reduction are just kind of like not realistic and would like anything really like salary reducing would make this team way too much worse to justify it. So yeah, I mean they're in danger of having their 2033 first frozen, right? Like if they're in the second apron again at the end. So like they're up against it. Did this sneak up on you? Because it's like, oh, Phoenix is screwed and Denver and Milwaukee. And it's like, all right, Cleveland also has some real issues.
I'm more so just amazed that it took them this long to get here because you look at their top. It just helped that Evan Mobley was on his rookie deal. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland weren't on Darius Garland's still on that first max deal. And Darius Garland's extension eligible, can sign for 2 years and 128.4 million. I would probably offer it, but we normally don't see players sign that type of extension because especially when they're his age. But I guess that's what I want to ask you because this ties into everything. How much do you read into this particular postseason when you're trying to figure out what to do with this team? Because we could say, okay, fine, they're going to be a second apron team, but let's even just say they could lop off Isaac Okoro, trade him into someone's exception, and then just re-sign Ty Jerome. After the series that he had against the Pacers, is that something they even want to do? And then it's, Sam Merrill even kind of struggling at points in that series. So how much do you read into what happened in the playoffs? And that includes with Darius Garland versus they were injured again. And how much of, if you lean towards, last year, you and I were a little bit over aggressive with what we were calling for with Cleveland. I don't think any of us are going to be calling for that this time, but it does. Yeah. These are small sample sizes. Injuries matter, but it's like, that's part of everything is I think what was also a huge crux of their appeal for me is it felt like their depth was functional to where it would translate to the playoffs. And I think it did at times, but it didn't translate like Indiana's depth did,
Right.
as an example. So I'm just wondering if you're running this team or just your view of this team, how much, if at all, has how the postseason ended influenced you?
So this kind of gets into what I was like my overarching thought is it not a lot because like look you won 64 games
It's a
and
lot of games.
you lost in the second round at least partly because of injury and like maybe who knows like maybe entirely because of injury just because like Garland was clearly hampered, Mitchell was going through it even though he was mostly very productive, Mobley had an issue like you can't really tell the story of the Cavs season without mentioning key injuries to key guys at the worst possible time.
Yeah.
So like to me that and that along with like their sort of general like lack of like medium flexibility. Like yeah, you can be real flexible if you want to trade your stars, but like they're not going to do that. So coupled with their like fairly limited options to change the team, I don't view this offseason as like, all right, like last year as the foil for it. Like, all right, got to make a big change. This doesn't work. The two bigs and two small. Like we're a long way from where we were on Cleveland just a year ago. Certainly we are. Maybe the consensus is a long way too. So maybe it's anticlimactic, but I think you probably run this back and with or without the Ty Jeromes of the world. Cause like what this postseason, maybe what you can take from this postseason that informs your decision-making is that Ty Jerome was an awesome regular season player that was not effective in the postseason. And you should not care so much about innings eaters and care a lot more about like who can be on the floor against Indiana. And we don't have an issue with it. And maybe Ty Jerome isn't that guy and it's not worth paying him what you'd have to keep him. So it just, to me, it just shifts the focus a little bit to who are our postseason guys. And otherwise we're kind of just, we're going to stick with the core that we have.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there. And what I thought was actually really cool is I don't know if you saw Donovan Mitchell had what I would call some of the more like forceful and passionate comments I've seen from a star that lost like pretty handedly against the Pacers, where he just, I mean, the gist of it was, we're going to be back.
Yeah.
And he apologized for the city of Cleveland, like, we're going to be back. And I thought that was really cool. And the whole Mitchell to Cleveland, I don't mean to be, I know we don't necessarily get too romantic when we're analyzing this, but the whole Mitchell to Cleveland thing just really fucking rules because the Cavs were not a team that was on his primary list. They traded for him anyway. He stayed.
Yeah.
And now you're at a point where you go through last season and you had some idiots like us. And like, we didn't say trade everybody, but we were like, well, maybe you look into trading Jared Allen after what happened. And they ended up extending him. You kept it together. And then now you go through this. You just won 64 games. And everyone's expectation was that you were going to make the conference finals at least. And he comes out of it just saying, basically, like, yeah, we messed up. We were injured. That's no excuse. Like, we're going to be back. And that's refreshing because I do recognize, and we talk about a lot, windows open and shut far more quickly than they normally do. But there's also something to, if your best players, all of whom for the most part, Darius Garland was injured, we could maybe have a discussion about Jared Allen, but like all of your best players just kind of being in sync and wanting to be there and not putting, there's pressure on the front office, but now it's not coming from your best player. Like, I think that means a whole lot here.
I agree. And I think, like, again, to sort of romanticize it, what's the whole thing? Like the dynastic Spurs never repeated, you know, they had, and you know, just the gap between the first Duncan title and the last one is like, whatever, 15 years or something ridiculous like that. Like as I was thinking about like, okay, what does Cleveland do from here as the last, you know, seconds of their season are ticking away? I did think more about like, I wonder if one of the effects of the second apron and like very careful spending and whatever is that like you kind of do have teams that are this good that realize like we can't just keep adding. It's like not possible. So let's not assume there's a move we can make that can make us better than a 64 win team. Because realistically, there just isn't, right? Like you just, that's about as good as you can be, you know, most years, almost any year. So like maybe we get like a little bit of a premium on continuity and like maybe we don't freak out every time a team that's this good doesn't, you know, deliver on these huge expectations. I don't know. I started thinking maybe it's like wishful thinking because it would be nice if we had like more continuity and gave a team more than like 1 or 2 shots to break through. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but it does feel like the right course, at least for this team. Just like see if you can win 58 games and stay a little healthier. And, like maybe you get a break in the post, maybe Indiana's hurt and you win that series next time it happens. Like it's so hard to be better than the Cavs were that I'm like hesitant to suggest they do anything, consequential. Not that they really can.
Right. And I think, so there are two ways to look at this. Let's take the Giannis question first. Would you consider, so they can trade up to 1 first-round pick in 2031 or 2032 right now. Would you trade Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and a first-round pick for Giannis Antetokounmpo if it was available to you?
I think I probably would. I think, you just have to get the one of the top 3 guys in the league. You have to do it.
I think you have to get it. I don't know that, but I mean, if Milwaukee isn't getting its own picks back, it's hard to find a package that would make them like Darius Garland kind of a tempo for the future and they could be competitive.
Yeah.
Maybe you could send Jared Allen to New Orleans to get back 1 or both of your first round picks.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the Cavs though, like, I don't know. I'm not seeking that out because there are 2 ways to look at it, because you kind of mentioned maybe you're healthier. What I kept coming back to is, in theory, this team did everything right during the regular season. Its stars weren't overused, and then you get to the playoffs, and they're all banged up anyway. So in my head, I'm like, what's the point of necessarily preserving that depth if this could just happen anyway?
Right.
But like Giannis is you really tether, like right now, okay, you're asset light, but your timeline is still so open-ended because of Garland and Mobley specifically. And if you go the Giannis route, you're very much in this truncated Donovan Mitchell Giannis window. It does help that you still have Evan Mobley, who's super young and amazing. I don't think that, I don't know. I think you probably would have to do it, but it's not something I came away from the playoffs thinking that, the Cavs need to do something on that level.
Well, right. And like you mentioned Mobley, I mean, we've been having conversations about this Cavs core, since it came together. And like, I can distinctly remember me saying, and I think you agreeing, like, I think the way forward, or like the best case scenario for this team, is that Evan Mobley is the team's best player unquestionably. And like, he might be that now, but it's questionable at least just because Mitchell is, just can do the things on offense that you need someone to do to win playoff series. But it's not, I mean, like, shouldn't it be the expectation that Mobley is a little better next year just based on where he is in the aging curve? And
not
like,
if you pay attention to the discourse, doesn't work like that, great.
You know what I mean? And like, isn't Garland young enough to take like a tiny step forward? And
was so good. There were people, I disagree, but like there were people for a while that had him like above Donovan Mitchell on their all NBA ballots. And
I did for a minute. It's just, I mean, he's really good and could get better, and Mobley should get better. So like, yeah, I mean, okay, so the Giannis trade, yeah, you probably got to do it. But what if in like 2 years, Mobley's a better player than Giannis, or like 3, we're not that far away from where like the trajectory lines have hit the X in the career arc chart. So like, again, so this is why I didn't want to get to this main point right away, because we're supposed to talk about their options. But to me, it's just like, I think this core is as good as it can be realistically. And I think you should give it another shot, and whether that involves Ty Jerome or Sam Merrill, who can say, but the core just needs another crack at it.
So what would actually be their needs to you, where it's, you're going to look at minimums, or like maybe they have movable salary. So if they really wanted to go all in, you could trade a first round pick plus salary. And if you're doing something like that, what are you looking to address?
Well, if it's a trade, then it's a little bit of a different conversation. But like, if you decide you don't want to pay 14 plus 80 in penalties for Ty Jerome, you're going to need a third ball handler, I think, unless you really think Mobley is going to take a huge step there, to where if one or the other of Garland or Mitchell's not on the floor, Mobley's just like, yeah, it's great, we're fine with him, like bringing the ball up and running a lot of the offensive sets. So you have to find someone to replace what Jerome gave you. But like, other than that, like, the easy answer used to be, well, we need someone to play the 3 or, undersized 4. And it's like, DeAndre Hunter's here. That's what he's for. And you still have Max Strus, and maybe Okoro is someone that you try to flip. But like, my answer, I guess, is just like, well, whoever they don't bring back, they need to replace. And that's like, you're talking 6th, 7th, 8th, wherever you think Jerome falls in the hierarchy, like 8th, 9th guy, something like that.
I am wondering if there would be, anything they could do. I agree with everything you said there, but where it's sort of you're melding two of those three things together, where I think a perfect example would be like if Okoro and DeAndre Hunter could be the same player, which would just fill like a lot of needs for them. Or it's, can you get someone who's another, like a third ball handler, but they're also bigger?
Yeah.
Like maybe they're Ty Jerome size, but they're better on defense. That's a tall order, but I think if
Mhm.
you're putting a first round pick on the table, maybe you could go, like, you're not going to go out there and address that on the minimum. Maybe would
No.
a Spencer Dinwiddie sign with you? Sure, but that's not going to be cheaper than Ty Jerome probably, but that's not going to solve your everything. And so I
Mhm.
still think they could probably hope to upgrade in those types of spots. But I don't, like, a name doesn't spring to mind where I'd be like, oh no, that's worth it and you should absolutely do it. And if they do, it's, you know, they're not going to be available. Like Herb Jones on this team, even though with
Oh,
the shooting, like that would be
yeah.
incredible. But hey, guess what? Like you're not getting Herb Jones for one first round pick.
Probably not, yeah, especially at his salary. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think like I mean, I wonder too, had the Cavs been healthy and Ty Jerome just may not have played that much, it would I just maybe you would bring him back then. I don't know. It's just like the conversations about their needs would be very different, I think, if the core guys had been healthier, because then like Ty Jerome, if you think he got exposed or whatever, like that would have been minimized because he just wouldn't have played as much because you could have leaned harder on Garland, for example,
Yeah.
who missed, significant time in the postseason.
I do, like, just to throw names out there, so we're not just saying do nothing. I'm like, I don't know, what will Torian Prince still be a minimum player after this year? Might be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
As a trade target, I don't know if he gives you enough of the ball handling. And I said about getting like Keon Ellis on this team, maybe just a
Ooh.
little bit too small. If you're willing to put a pick on the table, that could be kind of interesting.
Hmm.
But I honestly, and I hate saying this, but they might be the one team I say this about during the entire look aheads, which is like they feel after the DeAndre Hunter team, like they just feel so close to complete.
Hmm.
I would ask you though, so if you had the option of, if you could get rid of Isaac Okoro, so you bring back like, who do you view as more important if it was an either or situation for them?
Between him and Jerome,
Yeah.
I would say Jerome probably matters more, but that gets tricky if you're committing what it might take to keep him. Although, like, yeah, I guess you should assume it's going to cost you mid level or close to it because someone will probably be willing to give him the mid level.
Even honestly, I don't know,
You don't
because
think?
I was going through the list of teams the other day of who was even going to have the mid level, and you can get to a point where it's like 12 might. But I
Uh-huh.
think more realistically, if we're including cap space teams and then full non taxpayer mid level teams, we're looking at fewer than 10, probably like 8 or 6. And then how many of those teams are just going to want Ty?
Right.
Like Brooklyn's not paying. I don't think, well, I mean, they could use a ball, but they're not going to come and give Ty Jerome half of their cap space. Like, here's $20 million, like two and
Right.
40 or something.
You,
I don't
you wouldn't
think
think.
anyway.
Yeah. No, I think what is Okoro? I think Okoro makes like 11. So if you could get Jerome near that number, I think like he's a very good third guard, right? Like playoff stuff aside, I think if you believe that this past season was like 80% real, then he's worth the mid level probably because
Mhm.
he's a guy that can start on a good team if you need him to. You probably don't want that for a full season or postseason, but yeah, if you could get him at like the Okoro rate, then I would just way rather have Ty Jerome. Like Hunter being there means Okoro is kind of like, yeah, he's the great defender, hustle guy, but it's like you're playing him behind Struce and Hunter essentially in that same role. So it's like he's the more expendable one, Okoro, I think.
Anything else on them, or any name or like who would be the most likely player to be traded for them?
Well, that so like if you do look into this, you can't say it's seismic because he's the fourth guy. But if you look at moving Allen, for example, like you're trying to, even though we just said it's very hard to get better than 64 wins, let's say, well, we think Mobley can play center full time. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have a guy who we think maybe should just be a super high end backup, or like when we need to go two bigs kind of option, making 20 and then eventually gets up to like 28 and beyond on the next extension. What do you get? Like, who's out there? Like, we need Jared Allen to be our starting center, and we'll give you like a wing of some kind. Like,
Oh,
who?
I was
What
gonna say
team is it?
I have a prospective trade. There would be other math would need to be involved, or
Okay,
other teams.
what's your
Jared
Allen?
Allen for Jalen Wells and Zach Edey.
Jalen Wells and Zach Edey. Oh man, that's really interesting.
You could say no if it's not actually. This is off the cuff. I did not come in here with any trade ideas planned.
Well, I kind of like that for both. Because Edey makes more sense as like, yeah, we're not relying on him as a full-time starter, but man, we can throw him in there against the right matchups and or go double big. And Wells, the same issues with Wells just follow him to Cleveland, where it's like he's a little small to be guarding threes, but I mean, he's on a dirt cheap deal, so maybe that's your Okoro upgrade, and you can trim Okoro somehow from the books. That's a fun trade. If you just came up with that right off the cuff, I'm impressed.
The other one, I don't think this is enough, but maybe if you could, what would it take for you to send him to the Lakers? Like if they sent back, they have a first round pick in 27. They could send you like, is Austin Reeves and a 27 for Allen? Like there'd have to be more salary. If you were getting Dorian Finney-Smith as part of that deal too, I think the Lakers say no at that point.
Yeah,
but
they
like
do.
Austin Reeves, an expiring contract, and the 27 first round pick, that's your third ball handler. Then you have to go out and find another big, unless, part of the money coming back could be Jared Vanderbilt, but that contract is not great.
Right. In that scenario, I think the Cavs, because Reeves is, I don't know, very valuable to them, to the Lakers too. I wonder if
he's redundant in Cleveland. Like if you're playing
right, he's a luxury third ball handler, like high luxury. So you'd have to almost like, if I'm the Lakers, I'm like, I guess it's Vanderbilt, but it's like you're taking our worst contract back. It's just because you have to.
Honestly, I don't know if I would do it if I'm Cleveland, but like I wouldn't mind having Vanderbilt if I'm getting Reeves, and then I'm also getting another first round pick.
Yeah,
I think Jared Allen's super valuable, but like that was not his best series against the Pacers. I don't know that I like that for either team.
No, I don't like it as much as the Memphis one. And like, we're not trying to trade Allen. It's just like, okay, if you're the Cavs and you're trying to make a meaningful upgrade, you're not trading any of those other, Mobley, Garland, Mitchell. Like you're just not going to trade those guys. So it just almost has to be Allen if you really want to make a difference. And we're just sitting here saying like, I'm not even sure that's the right move.
What would you do Jared Allen for? The Kings wouldn't trade Keegan Murray for Jared Allen, right?
I don't think they wouldn't trade Keegan Murray for anybody.
What about Malik Monk and Keon Ellis for Jared Allen? And maybe does a pick need to go out in that one?
What are Monk and Ellis? Then you're talking, those are your third and fourth guards.
Yeah. Well, Keon Ellis could play some three for you.
A little bit, yeah. I think that's possible. I almost rather have Hunter. Hunter's a little bigger, maybe a lot bigger.
If Cleveland could duck the second 8, well, no, that would be like way too. The Nets would have to be involved there. It'd be really funny if they used Jared Allen and their first round pick as like the vehicle through which they acquire Kevin Durant for this team. Would that work for you?
Good God. Sure. Let's do it.
Would you be worried though? Could he fit with Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Darius Garland? I'm not sure.
For the 18 months you have him, it's going to be great. And then whatever happens after that happens.
I'm kind of out of random off the cuff, Jared. Well, New Orleans, like, would you give Herb Jones and stuff for, or you're like, no, we have Yves Missi and Zion. We don't know where we're going. We're not going that route.
Well, I don't know if New Orleans knows where it's going full stop, but like if you're giving up, don't you, in a vacuum, isn't Herb Jones more valuable than Jared Allen? Or do you view it the other way?
It'd be nice to see Herb Jones play some playoff basketball.
Sure. It's not entirely his fault.
Right. I don't know. It's tough because this season for Herb Jones was rough with the injuries, and
yeah,
I think it would be close. But if you have if New Orleans doesn't really know what it's doing, you're not gonna. And then also the money would be tough here because there's Herb Jones. Then you need to come up with like another $20 million or something, and that's just, you're not taking back DeJounte Murray if you're Cleveland. That would be a non-starter.
I just think like a lot, if you're really trying to figure out ways for the Cavs to get even better, I keep circling back to like, well, you just have to reconfigure the team so that Mobley's playing center, and instead of Allen, you have a cheaper like second big for a two big look, and then just another like big wing / forward type. Like, Herb Jones isn't a big wing, but like someone like that, you just change the makeup a little bit. And maybe if Mobley is just like, yeah, no, he's like a full on anchor now. He can do all that stuff. Like that's the different look you might go for.
Can I galaxy brain something?
Please.
This is we're not checking the framework. I could make it work if people are interested and give them the exact details of the deal. A 3-team trade between Golden State, Brooklyn, and Cleveland, where Jared Allen ends up in Golden State, Kuminga's in Brooklyn, and Cam Johnson is in Cleveland.
I actually had a thought, because as we're recording today, we'll just pull the curtain back. We're going to do a Warriors look ahead too. It's like, is there a framework where Kuminga is part of an Allen acquisition for Golden State? I hadn't thought about the third team and getting Cam in there. That's interesting.
The Warriors have to send out picks in that scenario, which is they can trade for, which is actually kind of wild when you think about it.
I was surprised by that too. Yeah, so, that's interesting.
Yeah, but is Jared Allen like the type of big that you think would work well in Golden State?
Yeah, I mean, he's better. You're not getting the spacing, but like he's better than Trace Jackson Davis and Kevon Looney. So
if it's like Jonathan Kuminga and how many picks are you attaching to Jonathan Kuminga to get Jared Allen? Because I think you could, is Cam Johnson for Jared? The first part of this would be from since this is a Cleveland podcast. Do you like Cam Johnson on the Cavaliers better than Jared Allen? And if it's like a scotch less, then you also need to send Cleveland something for this deal to work.
I mean, I think that's kind of the look I'm talking about, where it's like, you could argue about whether Cam Johnson's better than Jared Allen, like, just objectively. But if you're trying to change the Cavs in a way that's like, maybe we're more playoff fit this way, I think Johnson would be someone that could get you there. Like he's not, maybe he's exactly as good as Jared Allen, but like he's different. Like he makes the team different offensively, principally, because you really can be a full 5 out without giving up too much size. Like your rebounding is going to be a problem, because
it's also a problem with the two bigs.
Right. Johnson's not a good rebounder. And if you're swapping out your best rebounder for him, or like that, or maybe, maybe that's Mobley, but a good rebounder for him, that's going to accentuate something that's already like pretty weak. Right. So that's the other thing, is like, if the Cavs are going to get better, they're going to give it back somewhere else, probably, like if you're talking about a big trade. So on balance, maybe you're just different and that matters. I don't know.
Do you still believe, and I think this would be the good wrap up, because I'm with you. So we went through this exercise. The Cam Johnson one's super interesting. I don't know if you liked the Memphis trade I pitched. That's like leaning so far into just young guys that I'd be a little hesitant. We would run it back. But like, do you still believe if they were going to move Jared Allen, who of the core 4, if they were to move any of them, does feel like the most likely to go, do you still believe that you can approximate like good value in center on the cheap, to where it's because all the trades we kind of talked about, with the exception of that, the Memphis one, you're getting Zach Edey, but like, all right, I would love to know who's the other big or two bigs that are in their rotation at that point.
I still think that like capable backup center play, which is what you would be talking about, I think, if you're trading Allen, like as a need for Cleveland, because the whole idea is like Mobley's the center. I think it's still easier at center to get a minimum guy or close to it as like a good enough backup who could play in 2 big looks than it is to get like, oh, we need a wing or we need a ball. Like those guys just aren't,
right.
You don't run into it's uncommon that like Gary Trent Jr. and like Taurean Prince or like Malik Beasley signed for super, like those guys are the exceptions. And even they aren't like really what we're talking about for the Cavs. So yeah, I mean, that's still the case, right? We haven't the pendulum hasn't gone all the way back on centers where like suddenly it's not the easiest position to replace cheaply.
No, I'm with you. And I think Bismack Biyombo exists, so it's fine.
Sure.
I mean, honestly, the thought I had when we were going through this is, what if because you could probably duck the second apron if you're getting rid of, if you're not bringing back Ty Jerome or Merrill's, like, what if Brook Lopez was just like, hey, I'll sign for the mini MLE or even the minimum? Then it's like, okay, that's a different type of big from Jared Allen. I'll make that clear. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you have anything else on this team, or are you ready to take us out of here?
No, I think that's going to do it. What I would add, and I think we agree on, is like 64 wins is very good. You should just kind of see if you can do that again and then not be hurt. Fair enough. Like that's our cutting analysis.
If I'm Kobe Altman, the most extreme thing I'm looking at would be, is it like, can we bring back Ty Jerome and we need to lop off salary elsewhere? Or should we put our first round pick on the table, attach it to salary, and try and take, like, not bringing another star, but it's not trading the core forwards, trying to augment them yet again.
Sign Tyus Jones for the minimum, something like that. He's a free agent, right? Let Cavs fans especially let us know what you think. Let us know how comfortable you are with standing pat, because it's easy for us to say. We don't have any skin in the game, but I feel like that's the right call. Be interested to hear counter opinions. Wherever you're listening to this or watching this, rate, review, subscribe, leave us some comments on YouTube, join our Discord, links for that in the YouTube and podcast description. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Shouts, Frank Ntilikina, apologies, Jared Allen.